Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart introduces African culture and the effect that white colonisation had on the people and their way of life. The novel explores the idea of a tragic hero in the protagonist Okonkwo. Okonkwo displays all the traits of a tragic hero: exalted position, physical prowess, reverence to the law of God, loyalty to family, respect for the government, and above all, a tragic flaw that will ultimately defeat him. The first criteria of a tragic hero is exalted position. Although Okonkwo starts life lower in society due to the deeds of his father, he works hard and raises himself up. It says, Okonkwo was well known throughout the village and even beyond. His fame rested on solid personal achievement. So this shows how Okonkwo has built up his fame and built up the respect that people have for him. He didn't just inherit it from his father. Age was respected among his people, but achievement was revered. This again reinforces why Okonkwo was so respected despite his young age, because he did work hard and because he started from nothing and worked up till he had a significant wealth. He was a wealthy farmer and had 2 barns full of yams and had just married his 3rd wife. To crown it all, he had taken 2 titles. Now, these things are they're the symbols of what makes a man great in Amorphia. His wealth, which Okonkwo has, as he is a hard worker and he works on his farms and he has earned these 2 barns of yams starting from nothing. The number of wives a man has is also a judge on his greatness, because a man has to be wealthy enough to afford wives in the first place, and he also has to look after them, and it shows that he looks after his family. And he had taken 2 titles. Titles are given to the high up and respected men in society, and there are only 4 titles one can take, and even at a young age, Okonkwo has 2 of them, showing his exalted position in society. Physical prowess. From the very beginning, Okonkwo's physical prowess is very obvious. It says he brought honour to his village by throwing at Amelie's the cat, and Amelie's the cat was a great wrestler who was undefeated until Okonkwo, who was still a young wrestler, came along and defeated him in one of the greatest battles the village had ever seen. So this shows his obvious strength, even when he was just young. He had shown incredible prowess in 2 inter-tribal wars. So this shows that he's not afraid of war, and it's not just in one-on-one physical wrestling that Okonkwo is a great warrior, but also in actual wars. Okonkwo of Amorphia arrived at Mbino as the proud and imperious missionary of war. So it's not just his village that respects him as a strong man and a war hero. He is respected throughout all of the villages, and he is known for these strengths of his. Okonkwo shows reverence to the law of God, but not to the colonizer's God, but to his own gods. When the men are in one of the men's hut and one of them makes a joke about someone else's dead father, they all laugh, except Okonkwo, who laughs uneasily, because as the saying goes, an old woman is always uneasy when dry bones are mentioned in a proverb. So even outside of religious ceremonies and in his everyday life, Okonkwo respects the gods and he respects the powers that they have. And he's constantly wary of them, and because he believes that he knows that they rule his life, and it's not just at the religious ceremonies that he needs to show his respect, but also every day in his everyday life. Okonkwo is loyal to his family, although at many times it doesn't show how much he cares for them, but when it really matters, his concern for them comes through. Okonkwo pleaded with her to come back in the morning. This is when the Agbala's priestess, Chielo, comes to take away Azima, and Okonkwo is really worried about his daughter, and he pleads with the goddess, which contradicts his own beliefs in his religion, but his loyalty to his family is stronger than that in some ways, as he wants to prevent his daughter being taken away because he's worried about what will happen to her. Go home and sleep, said Okonkwo. I shall wait here. This is when Izima has been taken away, and her mother, Kwefi, goes and waits by the shrine, although that's kind of against their religious law, you're not supposed to do that. But then she sees that Okonkwo has also come to wait for his daughter, which demonstrates an obvious concern for her. That doesn't really show in his everyday life. It comes through in times when it really matters, and when he feels it's okay to show genuine concern. Respect for the government. Okonkwo has respect for his own clan's government, although he has no respect at all for the white man's government that comes in later, which he really has no obligation to respect, as it is not his own. He is a member of the Agugu, which are the ancient spirits of the tribe, and they're like their law. It's like their government in a way before the white men come. Because of his respect for the government, Okonkwo obeys what they tell him to do, despite however much he doesn't want to. Okonkwo was therefore asked on behalf of the clan to look after him in the interim. And for 3 years, Ikamafuna lived in Okonkwo's household. When the boy Ikamafuna comes to Umorphia, the village decides that Okonkwo should take the boy in. And Okonkwo does that without even questioning the law. And he just takes the boy in straight away and doesn't even consider refusing because of his respect for his government. He just knows that they will do the right thing for him and for the village. The only open course to Okonkwo was to flee from the clan. It was a crime against the earth goddess to kill a clansman. Okonkwo accidentally killed a man when his gun exploded in a ceremony, and according to the law of the clan, he must be punished for it, even though it wasn't an accident. He had done nothing wrong, but he still had to be punished into exile. At this stage of his life, Okonkwo loses everything he has worked for, but he doesn't refuse the exile. He doesn't fight back against them because he respects the government, he respects their law, and he understands that if he doesn't follow the law, then the next man might not follow the law. And he knows that their laws are the best things for them, so he follows them without question. Okonkwo's tragic flaw is evident throughout the whole novel. But his whole life was dominated by fear, the fear of failure and of weakness. So it even says in the book what his flaw is. And it starts from a young age when his father is disrespected by society because of his laziness and because of all his debts. And Okonkwo knows that he'll never get anything from his father, that he won't inherit, and he won't even inherit a form of respect that some men inherit from their own fathers. And so his greatest fear is of being a failure like his father and becoming like his father and being disrespected by society. And even his father was died in a disrespectful way and couldn't be buried. And it is Okonkwo's greatest fear that he should become like that and become, they call them Agbalas, which means woman. And if a man is called a woman, an Agbala, it is one of the greatest signs of disrespect and of lower class almost that there is, and it is Okonkwo's greatest fear that he should become a man like his father. His tragic flaw comes out in 3 major sections. His exile, the first colonization, and his return to Umorphia. In his exile, it's when his fears first become true. He loses his wealth and his titles and his respect in his village, and his exiles to his motherland. Then everything had been broken. He had been cast out of the clan like a fish onto a dry sandy beach, panting. And this demonstrates how Okonkwo is feeling at the time of the exile. He feels like he has lost everything. He has lost his life force itself, because his goals in life were to become respected and to become high up in society. But when he goes into exile, he loses everything. He literally loses his wealth. The only thing he keeps with him is his family. Okonkwo had yielded to despair. Losing everything and having to face this fear at this stage causes Okonkwo to despair he retreats inside himself and just becomes generally upset about the whole thing. He doesn't react to it in any other way because this was because it was due to the government and it was their laws. He doesn't fight it like he fights some of the other tragedies in his life, because he knows that it's from his village and it's his village's decision. So he accepts it, but he's just really upset by it. Okonkwo made a sound of disgust. This was a womanly plan, he thought. Such a thing would never happen in his fatherland. So he's speaking of his motherland where he's been exiled to, and this is the first time his anger shows through with his fears. So he realizes how different the two clans are. And he's disgusted with this new clan because it's nothing like his old clan. It's not violent in the way that his old clan was, in the way that how he prospered in Morphia, but in this clan it's not how he's used to living. It's a completely different way of life for him and he doesn't understand it. The second stage where Okonkwo must face his fears is during colonization. A sudden fury rose within him and he felt a strong desire to take up his machete, go to the church and wipe out the whole miscreant gang. So Okonkwo's fear makes him angry, especially at the white people when Noye goes and joins them. He's very violent in his anger. And Okonkwo had only stayed in hope that it might come to chasing the men out of the village or whipping them. So again, it demonstrates his anger and violence towards these people who he's actually afraid of because they're changing everything that he has known. And it comes back to fear being his tragic flaw, because these violent thoughts and wishes to do violent acts eventually become his downfall. Until that abominable gang was chased from the village, there would be no peace. So again, he's speaking of wanting to get rid of the white people in a rather violent way, because he's afraid of them. He's afraid of them changing everything that he's known, and he's terrified because they took away his son, who he wasn't proud of, but a son was a man's, almost a judge of a man, because it was who would continue on his family and who would inherit all his wealth and his respect. So having his son taken by these newcomers, it's very terrifying for him. Okonkwo's return to Amalfia was nothing like he expected, because the white people had colonized by that stage. And again, he's afraid because everything has changed in the 7 years since he left. Everything's different to what it was before. We must fight these men and drive them from the land. So again, his fear turns into anger as his desire to get rid of the men who have destroyed the life that he knew shows through. What is it that has happened to our people? Why have they lost the power to fight? Here Okonkwo displays how afraid he is, because he's showing that he can't do anything, because that's what he's most afraid of. He's afraid that he's going to fail his clan, that he can't get rid of these people and regain the clan's former glory and their former life. And he understands that he can't do anything for his people, and that makes him very afraid. Okonkwo was deeply grieved, and it was not personal grief. He mourned for the clan which he saw breaking up and falling apart. So, once again, like it did in the beginning, his fear of failure turns into grief, because he accepts that there's nothing he can do for his clan. He can't fight the white people alone, he knows that, which is what brings him to his ultimate downfall in his suicide, because he acts out, his fear turns into anger when he acts out and beheads the man. And then he commits suicide because it's a final stand against the white man, saying that he can't defeat them anymore. Okonkwo is terrified of being a failure like his father, and so he makes an effort to become a respected man in society. He is a tragic hero because he displays, he has an exalted position in society, and he has loyalty to his family, respect to the government, and to the law of God. And he has this tragic flaw of fear, which prevents him from fighting back against the clan. And for Okonkwo, it is his fear that causes things to